Hey everybody, it's Alan from Woodcrest Bonsai. In this video I'm going to feature sea hibiscus, also called maho. And even though I know there's a lot of distractions, it's the guy in the middle. This is growing in the ground, and if we pan up like this, it's about, I'm 6 feet high, so 7, 8, it's about 8 or 9 feet high. It's not bushy at all, it's just one straight trunk. It has some branching, but today I'm going to do the first chop to turn it into a bonsai. So I will be removing approximately 90%, perhaps even more than 90%. And then I've got another couple of ones inside, because this is in my front yard, inside the bag, inside the fence, that I'll also be working on in this video. So the next thing to do on this guy is to get closer, and then we're going to do the chop. And the wind has already picked up. We had a crazy couple of days here. It was very windy the past 3 days, which is why I haven't done any videos. And then yesterday we got, the cold front came through, some really nice rain that we needed badly. And now today it's a fire weather warning. It's a red flag, low humidity, high wind. So go figure. Anyway, here's our tree, here's the base, and it's got a lot of wintertime kind of foliage. It's kind of been beat up. And it has flowered, although I don't see any flowers that are actually open. But what I wanted to show you was the old leaf scars. So we've got one right there, and you can see there's a little tiny bud right above the scar. Now here's one that's facing a different direction, and the bud is actually beginning to emerge. So if I cut this guy to right here, this bud would begin to grow and take the place of the apex. Here's another one right here with a little bud. But I want this to be a bonsai, so I'm going to chop this guy way down, way down. And so if we, I think I'll just put it back on pause. So here we are, close up of the base. And I'm going to cut it to right here. You see that this bud, and you can still see the old buds. So there's actually a little bit of growth right here. So if I cut it to here, that growth is going to come right out at us. If I cut it to here, it'll be coming this way. If I cut it to here, it'll be almost exactly parallel with the way it's leaning. There's another bud way down here that I could cut it to there, make a much smaller tree. And I've got a tree just like that I'm going to work on today, where I cut a plant about 4 feet high down to just a couple inches. And I'll show you that after this guy. So this is the plan, is to cut so that this bud becomes the new leader. Take, so what is that, 7 inches, 8 inches, and the tree is 9 feet high, so that's 80 inches. So yeah, about 90%. I'm taking off about 90%. And I'm going to do it in 2 stages. First, I'm going to use my loppers here, but I'm going to come up a little higher, one thing, so it's easier for me. Okay, timber. And I want to show you this, what happened. See, what happened is it did not cut all the way through, so you can't really see it. But this bark right here has now damaged the trunk. And I don't want that on the cut that I'm going to make for the new leader right here. I want this cut to be really clean. So that's why I'm doing it in 2 stages. First of all, get, there's something, my tripod wants to fall over. Stay! Okay. So get the most of the weight of that other part out of there. Now it's going to be much easier. And I think I'm going to come around this way. Although in a perfect world, I really do want to do it from here, but I know that my hand's just going to be totally obscuring everything, which I'm an expert at. So how about if we bring the camera around to about there. Here we go. So the reason I'm cutting it to this bud is there's an angle to the trunk, and then this bud, you can see it's going to be coming this way, and even though the camera's not positioned correctly anymore, it will come back against that angle, and I will end up having an informal upright. So this is just a coping saw, and the only reason I'm using this is because it's got a brand new blade. I use this thing to cut off the apex of the bald cypress I'm working on. So I don't want to get too close to the bud, and I want to go at about a 45-degree angle. Oh yeah, beautiful. Beautiful clean cut. You can see the first cut with the loppers was just plain nasty, but this cut, beautiful and clean. So there we go. I may actually take a cutting of this, try to root it as a cutting, and possibly some of the other lower parts, because they're just so large. If they do root, they'll save me a year or two as far as taking small cuttings. See, hibiscus are interesting trees. They are incredibly salt tolerant, which is why they're called sea hibiscus. They are a hibiscus, and they've been distributed now all along tropical areas of the world, everywhere. And this is a pretty small tree, and this is obviously a bonsai channel, but the wood is also highly prized for different construction things. It's a very fine grain. People use it for carving. It's great for turning on a lathe. It's used in boat construction. So, pretty interesting plant. They get gigantic, which is why you can use something for boat construction. But that's it for this phase of this guy. Now the next thing I will do is just let this little tiny sprout just continue to grow and let the thing get at least as tall as it was before I cut it. Maybe not as tall, it just depends on what happens. Give it some good fertilizer. I have weeded around the actual plant. There's some weeds on the perimeter. And that's it for the actual work I'm going to do on this thing. The rest of it is just give it a good fertilization and make sure it stays moist, and then just let it grow. So that's phase one. This one here is a perfect example of how if you put a plant in a pot, and this really isn't a pot, in quotes, it's a old ice cream container, 1 gallon ice cream container. But look at the roots. These guys are heavy, aggressive rooters. And it just came out of the pot. Actually cracked the pot. Oh, it's coming out of the center hole. So all that needs to come off. And then we have a tree in here somewhere. Probably something like that. This looks like a sacrifice branch. And you can sort of see how this is a little bit thicker than this here. But this sacrifice branch is not really doing all that much. But I'm going to put it into a 10-inch bulb pan. Keep it still in training. Going to cut back this apex here. So first order of business is to get rid of all those roots. And this ice cream container is made out of a plastic that is not UV tolerant, so I could probably just break it apart to get the thing out of there. Which will make a giant mess, but look at it, because it's translucent, there's moss growing. Okay, so let's get our concave cutters. Chop this baby out of here. Thank you. God. They definitely root aggressively. Even in bonsai pots, I've had even smaller trees. They just shoot roots out of the bottom drain holes too, and then I've had them grow into the wood of some of my older benches, where the wood has sort of degraded, which is rather interesting to say the least. Can we get it off of there? Come on. There we go. Voila. Into the garbage. Okay, and then we have all this little incidental stuff. Microplastic. Well, yeah, good luck with that. I mean, this is why microplastic is in the environment, because the stuff breaks apart into little pieces, and it breaks apart into even littler pieces, and littler pieces, and littler pieces. But we probably should stay with bonsai. Okay. So I'm looking at the front of this tree as here. We've got some roots that I'm not happy with, so they're going to get cut away. And since this tree is still in training, I'm not going to completely remove all the roots. There's a knob from a branch that was cut quite a while ago. I usually just like to take my fingers and remove the surface roots, so there's no circling roots. I find it very interesting that this wood is prized as a woodworking wood, because it seems to be very soft. You know, look at that. I don't even have my tray. Oh no. Oh no. And there's a pretty heavy duty mat of roots at the base, so I'm going to take all that away too. And I'm not afraid of really chopping this guy way back, because they also root very easily from cuttings. So a tree that roots very easily from cuttings is also capable of taking a very heavy root pruning. And it's, I think it's St. Paddy's Day. Top of the morning to you. Okay, that looks pretty good. Then I'm going to chop it in case I want the tree to come up into here. I think I'll chop the sacrifice branch a little bit. And I suppose this is the first main branch. And even though there's a leaf right here, so if I cut it to here, that branch is going to go straight with the leaf. But I don't want that, I want it to go out. But there is a bud right there. So I'm going to chop it to that bud. And then I'm going to take that leaf off too. And then, if I want up and then back, I'm going to take it to this leaf right here. Can you believe? Didn't know Florida had earthquakes. Either that or total ineptitude when it comes to my ability to keep the tripod secure. Why is it so hard to see? I'm trying to bend over looking in the... So you see this leaf right here? That leaf right there? Oh, this is what the problem is. The sacrifice branch is poking us right in the face. So this leaf right here is going to my new apex. So to come up, and then this will... Keep using my little trimmers, and the wood is just a little too thick for that. There we go. Then we have a back branch, which I can shorten a little bit. And I think I may plant it a little bit more like that. It was like this. Just that little tiny angle actually changes everything. So why didn't I use my tray? Now I've got all this crud. Sitting on my bench. And I don't have anything to put it in. Oh, yes, I do. Just grab another pot that's sitting around. And I think I'm going to clean up and actually go get a tray because I've got more work to do. And we're back. I used to say that when I had my radio show. I had a radio show on gardening at the turn of the century. When I was a youngster and you said the turn of the century, it was 1900, eons ago. Now it's so weird to say the turn of the century and you're talking about only 2000. But I did. It was called the Garden Spot. And actually a friend of mine recorded every single episode. I'm not sure why that's relevant. But I never tried to BS anybody. If I didn't know the answer, then I told them, I'm not sure. And then I usually researched what the answer was and then came back the very next week because it was a weekly show. And I said, Mabel had a question on such and such and such and such, and here is the answer. So there we go. Okay, so now it's looking so much nicer. And all this, man, this is a sacrifice branch. Branch number 1, probably eek right there. Branch number 2, little back branch. I don't need that stub. Now do I? But you can see there was a huge chop right here. And then there was another chop right here. So this tree is one chop further along than the one in the ground. Of course, it's considerably thinner. So the longer you leave a tree to grow just totally wild, especially in the ground, the thicker the trunk's going to be. But you have a delay in when it's going to be a finished tree. So that's pretty much the correlation. And I think I'll just do the dump. There we go. Now, do I put it back on the ground where it was and let the roots slam out of the holes in this pot? Or do I put it on my benches where I have almost no room at all because I'm a junkie? There's so many trees, I need more benches. What I really need is a fence. I just don't have the $3,000 laying around to have the fence built. My God, I can't believe how expensive they are. Alright, but as far as trees go, he is finished. So I'm going to do another, couple, maybe 3. So here we go. This next guy is pretty much a brother to the one I just did. It's also in an old ice cream container. But for a long, long time I've looked at this tree, the whole tree, because we ain't looking at the whole tree. If we come up, we see it actually has some very interesting bunjin characteristics. So I've always thought, I could make that into a bunjin. Now, bunjin for a sea hibiscus is a fairly odd style because naturally they grow as huge multi-trunk shrubs. But I don't know, I just want this thing to be a bunjin. So that's what I'm going to do. And I think I'm just going to leave it in this ice cream container because it has not escaped. The container is beginning to crack a little bit. So if it's going to be a bunjin, thin trunk, no branching anywhere near the bottom. And I don't even know how to do it. I guess I can lift the tripod up a tiny bit more and then angle the camera like that. And this one comes off too. And this one comes off. And I'm going to shorten this guy tremendously. I'd love to shorten it to there, but there's a bud right here. If I shorten it to here, this bud will emerge and it's going to come straight out like this because that's the way it's pointing, and I certainly don't want that. So I think I'd really like to shorten it even more. It has been cut back once before, so I'm going to shorten it to right here. Need to hold it into place right there because there's a bud right there, so it will come out like that. And then for the rest of the tree, I think it's just a matter of just sort of shortening everything. If this is the apex, I just cut it so that it'll come out here. It sort of have 3 apices. That guy was getting ready to flower. I have had some flowers. Can I find that guy that was getting ready to flower before I fall on my... No, I was going to... Anyway, we know what I was going to fall on. That's the beginnings of a flower. Flower bud right there. They make a pretty flower, and it's also an interesting flower because it comes out yellow and then it darkens through the day, becomes more deeper orange, and then it eventually turns red, and then it falls off. Hibiscus flowers, at least on these guys, only last for one day. So there we go, a bunjin. And I'm going to keep it in this pot. And I think we're done with this guy, so let's do the next one. Believe it or not, this tree here is exactly the same age as the 2 I just showed you. The only difference is that when it was about 3 feet high, about as tall as the other guys. Well, let's review. The first one had a chop about what? 6 inches up, and then it was chopped again at about 10 inches. The second one, the chop was like 2 feet. That's why I'm going to turn it into a bunjin, because it's a long, thin trunk that leads it to be a bunjin. This guy here was the same size, about 3 feet, almost 4 feet, and I chopped it. Let's take it out of the pot. I chopped it down to almost nothing. What, an inch and a half? And unfortunately, I think I did it with loppers, so you can see it's got a scar there. Although it's healing kind of weird too. So there we go. And I have decided that this guy's going to go into a bonsai pot. This lower branch is totally unnecessary as far as the design is concerned. So it comes off. And then I think I want, this is my first main branch. This is in a better place, but it's way too heavy. So let's just shorten it. Maybe it will, you see, once again, I'm shortening it to a bud that's right there, that little bud right there. Then we have a back branch that can also be shortened. Same thing, I'm looking at a bud that's going to send it straight back. And then I think this is going to be another branch. And the apex is going to pop. Maybe even that guy's the apex. Not sure if I'm going to wire him into place or not. But I'm going to keep it from growing. So I'm going to chop him too. There we go. And actually, I should chop it to this leaf because I just chopped it to this leaf, so that means the new growth is going to go back. So I'm going to cut it one more node, at least in theory. Okay, so now I've chosen 3 bonsai pots. I originally thought, well, let's give it a really, really big pot. So this is the pot that actually my elephant tree was growing in. And of course, you could just almost just fit right in there. But this pot is way, way, way too big for the proportions of the tree. And the only reason I'd put it in a pot like this was to give the roots more room to grow, but I don't think we really need that on this tree. So he's out of the running. Then I brought 2 pots that, oh, my back. 2 pots, both of them are pretty crusty. Can I clean it up a little? And they have that lip that goes in, both of them. But I don't know why, but some potters put the feet, so one's right in front, and then the other 2 are out to the side, and I just don't like that. So here's another one where you see the feet are completely different. They're at the corners, and that's really what I want. That's what I like. So I'm going to use this pot, which means we're going to do some pretty heavy duty root pruning to get this guy into that pot. Oh, and the sun is coming out. And it hasn't gotten that windy yet. Once again, yesterday we had beautiful rain. Came down really nice and steady, pretty hard for a while. And then today we've got red flag warnings for fire weather. Super low humidity, high winds. And it's interesting because the last two and this one are all exactly the same age. But this one has hardly grown at all compared to the other two. Of course, the one escaped out of the pot, so all that extra root that was growing down into the ground gave it the opportunity to grow like crazy. There we go. I want to take some of this big knob off. Ooh. The soil on this guy is pretty ratty, so that looks pretty good. That's how he looks in the pot. How's he look in the pot? I'm spacing out on which the front is. I think this is the front. I want to get rid of some more of the roots that are pointing down so that he sits a little lower. And it's got a pretty decent nabari. It's not perfect, but I'm pretty happy with it. Trying to get this root right here to come over there. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. And he's going to get bonsai soil, which I have. Where is it? Okay, which I don't have. I'll be right back. And the wind is beginning to pick up, but we're almost done. I do have one more that I want to work on. But actually, it's a mame, little tiny guy. Just want to show you the unbelievable leaf reduction on that little mame guy. I mean, truly just unbelievable. And this guy had what I call lunar landing craft roots, so definitely want to get my toothpick. That's a big toothpick. It's a toothpick for a giant. There we go. Beauty-muss. So I will water him in. And once I see any kind of new growth, I'll give it some good fertilizer. I don't like to fertilize right away because if you overdose, you can get root burn. Of course, on sea hibiscus, they're like, what? Okay, one more little tiny guy to show you just how tiny you can get the leaves. And last but not least, this little tiny guy. Look how small the leaves are. Now this guy has totally grown out of the pot. You can see where the mesh is. The mesh is here. So it's 90% of the roots are below the mesh that was keeping the soil from going through the drain hole. However, we can rectify that. These guys are tough guys. Not sure where the front of this guy is. I haven't done a tremendous amount of styling on him. But just happy he's still alive. But look at the leaf miniaturization. This is a mature leaf. Phenomenal. Get rid of that. Phenomenal. Unbelievable. So now I'm going to Get the mesh out of there, basically just root prune it back to almost nothing. I'm not sure I even need the mesh, but I'm going to stick it back in there anyway. And we've got some very funky roots, so I'm going to take them off. And as I've said before, trees that root very easily from cuttings also respond favorably to heavy root prunes. So now I'm going to get a little tiny bit. My scoop is probably too big for this pot. A little tiny bit of soil. Squish them down in there. A little bit more soil. And there you go. I think this could be a front with this as the first branch, or it could be the other way around. This could be a front. Then we have two competing apices. But right now, just for the health of the tree, I'm going to leave everything for now. But I love this little guy. I love my mames. They're a challenge. But leaf reduction, truly amazing. So there we go. I'm going to give him another pinch. I'm going to spin it around. Another pinch of soil. And this guy's the same way. As soon as I start to see new growth emerge, I'll give it a little bit of fertilizer. It obviously doesn't need that much fertilizer because then it would just grow itself right out of the pot again. So there you go. Sea hibiscus. Super salt tolerant. Super tough plant. Aggressive rooter. However, if you live in places that get cold, very tender to cold, will be killed in a freeze. So if you live up north and you want to try it, you've got to give it some kind of winter protection. Otherwise, what did we do? We did 5, the one in the ground, which is, by the way, where this leaf came from, and then 2 that I just left in training. The second to the last one, that was the same age as the other 2 that I put into a bonsai pot. And this guy's been in this pot for quite a while, sort of just hanging off the edge. But so thank you so much for watching. And if you're subscribed, you'll be able to continue to watch these guys develop. I think this is a pretty good example of how you can take the same variety and basically have 5 different styles, 5 different sizes. So that's the beauty of bonsai. You can create the vision for the trees you want in many different ways, even with the same species of tree. So once again, if you're subscribed and hit the notification bell, you'll be able to watch these guys continue on their journey. Leave a comment if you like, and hit the like button if you like this video. And that's it for today. So I truly appreciate it, and thank you so much for watching Woodcrest Bonsai.